Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Here's a quick civics lesson. What's politics? Well, politics is a system that allows people who violently disagree with each other to reach compromise without shedding blood. It's worked well for a long time in this country. But when one side decides it is no longer willing to compromise, that system breaks down. Without compromise, you no longer have politics. Instead, you have an especially fanatical form of religious belief. ISIS, for example, is not a political organization. Its leaders reject accommodation of any kind. Its leaders assume that everything they do has the approval of a higher power. They are good people. They know that. They know their beliefs are not simply correct, they're the only possible beliefs. Anyone who disagrees with them is, by definition, immoral. So a system like that does not allow for the possibility that good people might be mistaken once in a while or reach different conclusions sincerely. People with different opinions are, again, by definition, bad people. In fact, they may not even be people at all. They might be subhuman. They must be converted to the faith or crushed and eliminated. This is not an American way of looking at the world, and yet suddenly it's everywhere. And unfortunately, it now defines parts of the modern Democratic Party. Joe Biden didn't know this. Biden has been in Democratic politics all of his life, but he's taken the last couple of years off. He's been flying around the world getting rich by giving high-priced speeches. By the time Biden decided he wanted to run for president yet again, his party had changed completely, but nobody told him. So he made the mistake just the other day of saying this about Mike Pence.
The fact of the matter is, it was followed on by a guy who's a decent guy, our vice president, who stood before this group of allies and leaders and said, "I'm here on behalf of President Trump." And there was dead silence. Dead silence.
He's a decent guy, Biden said of Pence. That's an old-fashioned way to talk. That's how people in Washington, political Washington, used to talk about each other. It was one way that they reminded themselves that politics may be important, but it's not everything. Every political opponent is also, on some level anyway, a human being and a fellow American. Our common humanity is stronger than our political differences. That was the assumption that they had and have had at least since the Civil War. And by the way, it has to be the assumption that all of us have if we're going to live together in the same country. Cynthia Nixon disagrees with this. Nixon is a former actor. She's now a political extremist. She spends a lot of time on Twitter yelling at people. When she saw what Biden said about Pence, she was enraged. Cynthia Nixon disagrees with Mike Pence's views on gay rights questions. Therefore, she knows that Pence cannot be a decent person. It's just not possible. She told Joe Biden this on Twitter. Joe Biden had no choice but to agree with her. "You're right, Cynthia," Biden wrote back. "There is nothing decent about being anti-LGBTQ rights, and that includes the vice president." People used to say that Joe Biden was a decent guy, too. But in the modern Democratic Party, there are no decent guys anymore. There are only people who are with the program and apostates who deviate from it. Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard suddenly is in the latter category. How did that happen? By any sane measure, Gabbard is a staunch progressive. But she does hold heterodox opinions on foreign policy. Instead of agreeing with Bill Kristol's foreign policy, she still believes what many progressives used to believe. She wants to keep the U.S. out of pointless foreign conflicts and instead focus on domestic concerns. And for having that opinion, she's almost been expelled from her own party. Watch. They've dismissed you as sucking up to this dictator. You're a bad person is basically what they're saying. Has anybody actually debated you on the points that you're making?
No. Constantly I see, again, people from both parties instead resorting to name-calling or superficial attacks because they refuse to engage on the substance of this argument about why they continue to push for and try to wage these regime change wars, ignoring the disastrous consequences on the people in those countries and the American people.
So that's suddenly a very controversial thing to say in the modern Democratic Party, a place where there is no room for dissent anywhere on any issue. On Wednesday, for example, a handful of Democrats joined with Republicans to add an amendment to a universal background checks bill in the House. That amendment would require reporting a gun buyer to ICE if that buyer is an illegal alien, a group that is not allowed to buy guns in the United States. In a closed-door meeting after the vote, the Democrats who joined with Republicans on that were reportedly denounced by party leadership for their racism. The party's new ideological enforcer, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, warned that Democrats who help Republicans in any way would go on a, quote, list and would have primary challenges next time they ran. So that's what extremism looks like. The enemy is 100% wrong, and we are 100% right, always. They are going to hell, and we're saved.
What is happening here is a sin against God. I believe that.
Jesus said, "Suffer the little children unto me." He did not say, "Let the children suffer."
A time in which we celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ. Thank God there wasn't a wall that stopped him from seeking refuge in Egypt. Thank God that wall wasn't there. And thank God there was an administration like this.
And while we're doing the Lord's work by ministering to the needs of God's creation, they are ignoring those needs, which is to dishonor the God who made them.
Mm-hmm. We're doing God's will. We're on God's side. God loves us. God does not love the other side. They're sinners. They're going against God's will. And in fact, you know what? They could be Nazis.
This is the United States of America. It isn't Nazi Germany.
Bottom line, Donald Trump increasingly looks like Hitler in Nazi Germany.
Much like Hitler took over the Nazi Party, Trump has taken over the Republican Party.
If you vote for Trump, then you, the voter, you, not Donald Trump, are standing at the border like Nazis going, you here, you here.
They are the tactics that have been used through history by the worst purveyors of pure evil, including slave traders, including Nazis, including terrorists.
So what you're looking at, that's not politics, it's a cult. Nuance is the enemy. Accommodation is a sin. Ask too many questions or think too many independent thoughts and you will be denounced. You'll wind up on Commissar Ocasio-Cortez's list. We reject this completely. It's totalitarian. It's also stupid and boring. It's a replacement for thought. It's, by the way, destroying the country as well. We will always welcome people we disagree with onto this show. We assume they are decent people. And by the way, mostly they are decent people. We'll do our best to find common ground with them and anyone else whenever we can, because why wouldn't we? And that's why you'll often see sincere leftists on this show treated with respect. Tulsi Gabbard, Glenn Greenwald, Ro Khanna, Michael Tracy, many others. We disagree with these people on a lot of things, but not on everything. And that's the point. But most important of all, they are Americans just like us, and that matters most. We need to remember that. David Burstein is co-founder of Run for America, and he joins us tonight. David, thanks a lot for coming on. So I understand that Biden wants to appeal to the base, and the base is mad at Trump. I get it. But since he's an adult over 70 and he's been in this a long time, wouldn't this be a perfect moment for him to say, wait a second, I know Mike Pence, I disagree with him on gay rights and probably 1,000 other things, but he's a decent man. And you have to be able to allow that your opponent's a decent man, or else we just have war. Why didn't he say that?
Well, I think he's recognizing what the Democratic base is at the moment, right? And I think that's a big problem for him and his desire to run for president in this political climate.
I agree with you.
Right. I think there's also a blurring, as you just pointed out, when it comes to issues that have to do with, for instance, LGBT rights, I think there's a different set of questions that people are looking at. People do feel, and Mike Pence's positions do suggest to many people that we should be treating people, indecently in other people's eyes, right?
But hold on.
But that should not be a case for saying that Mike Pence is a terrible person, even if he's being indecent to other people.
Well, look, there are a lot of opinions that I think are indecent that are policy of the Democratic Party. I mean, I could name a lot of them, beginning with abortion. And I feel that as strongly as any LGBTQ activist feels about his set of issues. But I also believe, and I think I am required to believe, that people who disagree with me can be really good people. They just reach a different set of conclusions. The Democratic base does not believe that. That's a totalitarian belief. It's a threat to the country, and it's a recipe for civil war. So why doesn't some adult come in and say, settle down, AOC? Other people are still people, even if you disagree with them. No one's brave enough to do that.
Well, look, I will say that I don't think people should be engaged in this, but I will say that I think people feel emboldened by their constituencies. AOC is an example of someone who ran not on a position of compromise. She did not run for office saying, we should compromise people, we should work along. Joe Biden is trying to run in that vein, right? He got in trouble a couple weeks ago for saying something about how a Republican, he liked a Republican, Fred Upton in Michigan, and people criticized him for that because it cost that person an election in a swing seat. So, the reality is she is saying, I am for this. I am going to be radical. I believe the problems of our time require radical solutions, and I'm not interested in what other people.
No,
that's what her constituents. You could easily say that's what her constituents voted for.
Well,
right?
And I mean, like 20% of her district even voted.
Absolutely.
But no, you make a fair point, and I agree with that. That's who she is.
Right.
What I'm saying is that's poison. It's super dangerous. She's an influential person. Some of her policy ideas are kind of interesting. We should debate them. But if we begin with the assumption that anyone who disagrees about anything is not fully human, then why don't we, or is indecent or is immoral, if we start framing everything as a moral question, then why don't we wind up shooting each other? Sincerely.
Well, I think to be fair, that I wouldn't say that any Democrat in office thinks Republicans are immoral on every single issue. There are a number of issues you played in that clip reel in which those things have come up. And it's not coincidental that some of those issues are issues about children at the border. They're questions about LGBT, rights.
Okay, whatever. Spare me. I mean, there are lots of issues that I feel that way about, that there are moral issues. I get that.
But having a view on moral issues is not saying that people are indecent people on all.
What we're arguing about is not salvation. Political parties can't keep you from going to hell, and they can't bring you to salvation. They can only pass laws and form policies.
I think some of those people in that clip should be reminded of that.
That's my point exactly. That this is not a religion, and if we start pretending that it is, we abet extremism, and we're going to actually wind up reaping the whirlwind from that kind of crap. When our leaders say, "Oh, the other side is immoral," really? They're Nazis? What do you do to Nazis?
But Tucker, let's also be honest about how Republicans have been on this issue. Would you really say that you think Republicans have not used some of the same language on the part of Democrats over the past several decades?
Yes, some of them have, and I hate that crap. But the leaders of the Republican Party have never done that. The people like the guys, Ronald Reagan never said our opponents are evil.
Yeah, well, that was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. I'm just saying, and by the way, you make a fair point. If AOC is obviously a bit of a sideshow, though she's gaining power, Nancy Pelosi should not be talking that way. It's just too powerful. You played a clip of there. Generally speaking, that's not her demeanor. It is reflective of a new generation of people. Yeah,
right? Because you see Biden, you see people like.
No, I get it. They're zealots, and the revolution always eats itself. I'll give you the last word.
The political moment in this country has changed. The rhetoric has heated up, and it's very, very important to these people that they stand with their constituents and what those people believe.
It's scary, I think. David, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck in the revolution. Robert Patillo is an attorney and a radio host, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Patillo, thank you very much for coming on. So I would throw that to you. And you're a Democrat, a liberal. I assume you agree with everything that your party says. But is it helpful to frame every issue as a moral imperative where there's no gray and no potential for compromise?
Well, I think one of the issues we have to understand is that people are not monolithic in their thought. Just because you identify with a party doesn't mean there's not diversity within that party. Well, I don't think anyone would believe that Donald Trump and Mitt Romney agree on fiscal issues, for example. So what we have to do is people in their own districts have to do what their constituents sent them there to. If you're from a red state, if you're someone like me who's a pro-gun, pro-life, fiscally conservative Democrat, then maybe AOC isn't the candidate for you. But we have to leave space for all those things to breathe. And let's not act as if Republicans weren't doing exactly this in 2010 and 2012 when they said that Obamacare was worse than slavery, where you have people saying to Obama, "You lie," in the House, in the chamber of the House of Representatives. So what we need to do is tamp down the rhetoric on the extremes. The normal, everyday Americans, the people who just want clean air, clean water, a job, good education for their children, do not care about this crap on the political extremes. All they want is for people to come together and find compromises. We could have had a compromise on immigration and border security, but the Freedom Caucus and Mark Meadows blocked that in 2013.
Well, let me ask you one question. I basically agree with you. And as a sort of matter of policy, I don't think you should be yelling at people from the audience, no matter who it is. So I don't think you should yell at the president during the State of the Union. But since you brought it up, and since we now actually know the facts of it, that member of Congress yelled at Obama when Obama said illegal aliens will never get government health care. The new government health care plan, Democrats now support, over 100 co-sponsors, gives government health care to illegal aliens. And so does Obamacare. So can we at least admit he was lying? As a factual matter?
regardless of the factual matter in that case, because remember, this is still 5 or 6 years later. You have to have a level of respect, a level of decorum,
I agree with you.
Of professionalism when it comes to events like this.
I agree.
Because guess what?
There's a different way to express.
The 90% of us in the middle who aren't on the 5% in the Tea Party extreme or the socialist extreme, we just want to get things done in America, get things done in Congress. And what these extremists have to understand is you have to put together a legislative and governing coalition. You can't do it by yourself. You can't just push through all these crazy policies, because guess what? If Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren become the Democratic nominee, there are going to be a lot of blue dog Democrats in the center like me who abandon the party.
I think they're going to purge you first, Robert. I think you're in trouble. They're going to come for you. But I appreciate your coming on our show before that happens. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tucker.